So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am a professor of marketing here at the GSB. For the last 5 years, I've been teaching a course on Salesforce management. I just did a double session yesterday, as a matter of fact, and so I'm on the verge of losing my voice. So my strategy today is to let you and the panelists do as much of the talking as possible. I just want to set this up for you. First of all, I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. I trust that you have your bios, but I'm going to pose a question for them that will allow them to tell you something about who they are and how they fit into this topic. Again, the reason that I'm here is not because I'm a marketing professor, but because I've been teaching sales for a little while. And in part of our course, one of the things that we focus on are the challenges associated with early stage sales. So that's where we want to focus here. Now let me try and set this up a little bit, because it occurs to me that when you look at this collection of panelists, you ask the question, well, if they kind of are coming to early stage sales, what's the most important part of what they did starting out? Did they come at it from more of a marketing perspective, or did they come at it from more of a sales force and sales management perspective? So I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about that. What it does is it sets up two possible topics of discussion. If you're more interested in marketing, then the big early sales challenge is, how do you build a reputation and a brand with no budget for doing it? And so we'll talk about some, it's possible we could talk about some of the early stage branding challenges for companies that are trying to get sales. On the other hand, if what you do is a lot of business to business, you sell a large technical complex product, then part of your challenge may be, well, how do I build an organization with selling capability? Where do I find it? How do I build it? How do I get it off the ground? And so there may be questions that relate to that as well. What I propose to do is ask a question to the panelists that will let them sort of tell you what their perspective is. And then most of the time, we'll be letting you ask questions that takes your interest and matches it with these guys' expertise, so we can have an interesting Q&A. So I'll start with a few questions. We may spend the first half an hour or so with me posing some questions to bring out these issues, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and as moderator, all I'll do is try to identify as many people as I can and get your questions, okay? So let me start then with the first question for our panel. I'd like to ask you guys each individually, kind of introduce yourself. Some of you have been involved with more than one organization, so you may want to do a little bit of picking and choosing here, but at the early stage, when your organization launched, when you were trying to get it off the ground, what was more important, marketing or sales? Can we start with that? And can we start with Brad?
Sure. So I'm Brad Stroh. I was a GSB class of 2002, and I co-founded with a classmate of mine from '02 a company called Freedom Financial Network, which includes a bunch of direct-to-consumer financial services products. And Bills.com, which is a lead generation and consumer finance portal that sells leads. We're about a 400-person company now, and our sales organization's probably 170 of those people. And sales is very, very core to what we do. We are probably more of a marketing-driven sales organization, so we try to turn our sales group into efficient systems and processes, and with direct-to-consumer marketing, ideally turn them into kind of order takers, not perfect. But so I'd say early on we spent more time, money, and effort on marketing and establishing a brand and generating leads, and less time on the sales organization. We've had a lot of failures through that process, by the way, in determining commissions, culture, several turnovers of VPs of sales. As an aside, I'd say a sales organization in our company, and probably in a lot of organizations, is the most difficult group to manage for cultural comp. Tons of reasons. But I'd say early on we probably focused more on marketing than kind of outbound selling.
My name's Andy Lotz, class of 97 here at the GSB, and just did one thing, packed my truck up right after graduation, drove down to San Diego and started a watch company. 1997, the old economy companies were really kicking ass. No new economy stuff was happening. So I was a lucky guy. It was thinking about starting a business, and my partner came to me and said, "Hey, buddy, what do you think of watches?" And so I had time to noodle on it here at school. And there's 400 brands of watches. It's been around for 500 years. Why in the world would you want another one? Thinking about what we had just at the get-go, we understood a distribution channel. We knew the sales guys. We knew the reps, we knew the distributors, and at that point, it was really more of a marketing job to convince these guys that we already knew that there was a value to carrying our brand. So I would probably answer the question, we started marketing to our sales guys. Why in the world would you want to be our sales guy? And from that point, we tapped into the distribution network that we already were familiar with, which was specialty sporting goods around the world, snow, surf, and skateboard. We're in about 30 countries, probably have about 120 sales reps around the world, and sell to the youth market retailers.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Carducci. I'm with Medallia, and we're an enterprise feedback management company, and I head up their hospitality practice. I've been with them since we were founded, and we basically targeted the hospitality industry as our initial industry because we felt that there was a great opportunity there. And so my role was really not only to kind of help with development of the product, but also out there selling. And it's kind of interesting because we're a business to business type of organization, and so I think that the story might be slightly different here. We definitely focused on strategic marketing from a product design, pricing, target market perspective in terms of really understanding that and putting together a product that we felt was really far above and beyond what the competitive offerings were out there. But we completely focused on sales at the beginning. I mean, I think we probably are still working on our branding, really, and a lot of it was kind of the day-to-day people who were the business people doing a lot of the selling. And we just recently actually hired a sales organization last year. So we've been in business since for 8 years now. And I graduated in '93, so I'm feeling a little old next to all these youngins here. And the founders of the company were GSB 95.
Hey everyone, I'm Mark Salko, class of '93. You're not the oldest. We're together. So, my perspective on this comes from co-founding two companies with another guy who couldn't be here, Matt Glickman. One was Baby Center, which was a consumer-facing web business that we started in '96, and it had two businesses blended in one. There was an advertising business which had a very traditional media sales model, and I did all the initial selling and ran that sales organization, so I'll talk about that throughout the session. But it also had a consumer e-commerce business, which was very marketing-led, and so it was very in vogue to try to blend business types, and it still is to some extent in the consumer sector on the internet. And then in 2001, we started Merced Systems, which is a classic enterprise software company, and that's the business that we continue to run today. And that's entirely sales-driven, and I did all the initial selling and run the sales organization. We now have, infrastructure, VP of sales, and about 25 people selling. And the average order for us is over $1 million, so it's a very considered, long sales cycle structure. And as a result, I'd say, heavily sales-led and not marketing-led. And I'll comment more as the day goes on. But it's a pleasure to be with everyone. Excited to be on the panel.
All right. Thank you all, and for the introduction. I think I can follow this up with a question. Would you be able to answer whether or not your focus was principally marketing or principally sales? And that is, at the very early stages, before your company has really solidified its reputation, how did you get those first few sales? What were the strategies you used to kind of get it off the ground?
Start with me.
You're going to find that there's this sort of general
shuffle.
Until these guys start asking their questions, you get to sit next to me.
Terrific.
You get to feel
Terrific. Well, I did it. I mean, we bootstrapped our company, my co-founder and I think lack of capital for us was sort of necessitated that we did everything. Reality is that turned out to be pretty beneficial going forward as we learned what resonated with consumers directly, how the sales cycle worked. Our challenge was handing it over to a team. But how did we get our initial sales then? We did a couple things without a brand, which was we outworked people. I mean, matter of factly, as an entrepreneur, you sort of have to. The other is we partnered with some channel partners where we could kind of dovetail under their brand. So in consumer finance, there's a whole bunch of companies that have big brands, and we partnered with some of the biggest in trying to create products directly for them to service their consumers. And when you get a referral from a loyal customer of another organization in consumer finance, you try to turn it into order taking. So for us, it was kind of partnering with channel partners to get those leads a little bit.
Yeah, mostly hand waving that we could deliver a product that we had yet to deliver. The very first sale I still remember, a guy gave me an order form and I looked around in our trade show booth and said, where do I put this? Didn't think I would get it. I mean, I'm more of a product background, and my partner was a marketing background, so the sales thing kind of hit us in the face. But like I said before, we work in a very traditional consumer product channel, so we solicited and recruited sales reps. And that was really the first sale. Why would these guys want to work with us? And then, unlike Mark, our average order was probably about $1,500. So we had to have a lot of them, and that meant more sales reps. So we recruited about 15 sales reps, and then tried to give those guys every single tool they asked for, which it sounds a lot easier than it actually was. Hooking up our product cycle with their sales cycle and getting them sales tools and commission structures and warranties and credit people, everything that they needed. Once that was up, they felt comfortable putting their reputation on the line and placing the product. And I think there was a lot of finger crossing because they were using their established relationships with the buyers almost to do a favor for us. Hey, place the product. It looks cool, and it will sell. Based really just on, I don't know, their own good looks. And so the product sold through, and then that was easier from there.
So before we go on to Elizabeth, let me ask you, Andy, what did you say to convince them? I mean, convince me.
The reps?
Yeah.
The sales reps?
Yeah, hire that rep and say, what are you going to do? Why should I come and try and sell watches for you?
Well, I guess one of the things we were going for us was very practical things. You didn't have to get a bigger van. You didn't have to get a bigger warehouse. You already had relationships. And this was just sort of an add-on sale to their existing brands.
Okay.
So, hey, Jim, you're talking to the guys over at Villains about your clothing line. This is complementary to that. It's something new in the marketplace. It has something. It adds a little bit of more flavor to your sales pitch on the other things. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Basically, I try to get them to say, it's 10% of your time, but it could be 20% of your revenue to the sales reps.
Okay.
And try to make our program as easy as possible for the reps.
That gets my attention. When you start talking about money, are the margins and commissions and so on good? Did you have to be extra aggressive there?
No, we were pretty standard on commission rates in our category. Accessories and action sports is anywhere from 8 to 12%. So we stuck at 9 and held on to that.
Uh-huh.
But no, the commissions, how you get paid, people wanted to get paid when they placed the order instead of getting paid when we got paid, and that was a little bit battle. So we wanted to recruit our sales guys as credit people as well.
Okay.
But they wanted a nice, clean little, bow around it package to say, I've already got the relationships. This is going to take very little time, and I could do it.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll think about it. I'll get back to you. Elizabeth, how about you?
Sure. I think this is a really great question because it's a really hard thing to do. I remember sitting across the table from someone when we were first out selling. We didn't have one client at the time, and this person told me it would be a career-limiting move for me to hire you. So you come back from that meeting and you think, okay, what are we going to do now? And I think, we're in the same sort of situation that Mark is because we're an enterprise software company. Our sales are in the hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, and you have no clients, and how do you convince somebody to buy? And I think there are a couple of things I would say. One of them is you rely on other reputations, like your personal reputation, your networks. Our first major client came out of a connection we made through a long ago GSB grad, who basically was willing to give us the time of day and listen to us because of that connection. He didn't know us anything other than that. And he was at a very senior level in one of our target companies. Having the business people go out and sell was hugely helpful because you have a certain amount of credibility based on the reputation you had from your prior experience. So I think the fact that I came out of the hospitality industry, I was at a pretty senior level in one of the large hospitality companies, I could talk their language, that helped a lot. And a certain amount of kind of really understanding, this sounds so basic, but really understanding what your customers' pain points are, what need you really fill for them, and really appealing to that because, this is like great company lore, but we were actually out there, we had just finished, we'd spent a lot of time developing the product. We really tried to put a product together that we thought was going to appeal to these people, and we spent probably about 6 to 9 months of our initial startup time just doing that. And we first went out selling in the summer of 2001. And this is the hospitality industry, of course. And I was in Memphis in a meeting on September 10th, 2001. We didn't have any customers, got on a plane, headed home, and the next morning, well, everybody knows what happened, right? And we were just absolutely convinced that was the end of the company. Because we thought, who's going to go out and spend $1 million, right, with what's going on? And the interesting thing was that we actually had a product that was... right, at that point in time, there were a lot of companies that suspended. This is basically it's customer feedback products, right? Surveying. There were a lot of customers that had clients that had suspended their programs at that point in time because they, thought it was a couple $1 million that they could save to the bottom line at that stage, knowing what was going to be happening. And luckily, at the time, everybody was doing very traditional surveying via mail or phone, and these were very expensive programs. And even though our program, still a lot of money, it's a huge cost savings for them. And so I think at the end of the day, we were able to find that one thing that really hooked those initial customers. And once we got those first customers, that we got Hilton as a client, and that name carried us through a lot of other meetings. So,
what I'd say is that sales in the early days is intensely personal. You're forming a relationship with a person who you hope will become your champion, and as a result, their personal and individual interests overlap with what their company needs, but there are other things that they're looking for individually, and you have to connect with them and figure out what they're looking for. And in the two cases that come to mind for me, one was, I'll never forget, John Burbank, Pampers brand manager, Procter & Gamble. He was the first customer we had at Baby Center. And Dominic Cipolla, head of a call center for a unit of GE, which was our first customer for Merced. And, each of them individually wanted some innovation part of their personal portfolio. They wanted to do something in that year that was going to be good for them personally and good for their company. I mean, if you find someone who has that right sort of champion material, I don't know if you guys cover the Miller-Heiman kind of model, there's always they're not a champion if they don't have that element early on. And only a founder can really find that in the early days. I mean, both of these guys signed up with us when we didn't have a product. So we gave them the opportunity to help shape our product and provide requirements. We gave them things we didn't even think of when we showed up for the meeting, like, hey, banner advertising? Yeah, I'm not interested in that, but the ability to do online research in a way that no one at P&G is doing right now, that's interesting. Can you give me that? And, we shaped something that was very going to be useful for them. And then they just felt connected to our company forever. I mean, both of them are now really good personal friends of mine. And I think you need that. And I wouldn't underestimate it, and that's why, I'll come back to this later on. Just don't hire a VP of sales for a long time, until you know what you're selling and why. And I'm sure we'll all sort of echo at different things around timing, flavor of sale, what you're trying to do, what the structure is, who your champion is, why they're your champion. It's just you got to do it. But anyway, that's how it happened for us.
Okay. So, why put that off when we can just sort of jump right into it now?
Yeah.
So the next question I would have is, as far as looking for that first person. So you're trying to build your sales, your early sales, and it may be a marketing person you're looking for, it may be a salesperson. The question is, how do you find the right person? And maybe you could also speak to, when do you know it's time to hire that person? Can we start with Mark and work back, give Brad a little bit more rest?
If you're going to be really effective as the head of your company, you need to just be a student of your market, the nature of demand, why people buy, why people really buy, not why you want them to buy or think they should buy. And you got to know that, and the only way you're going to really know that is because you're doing a lot of the initial marketing and you're doing a lot of the initial selling. You're really listening. You're there, and you might not know the answer to that question for some time, and you're feeling your way. That's pretty common in an early stage company, and I don't think you can bring on that head of marketing and that head of sales until you really know, because you're going to bring on the wrong person. It's really common, par for the course, that you're going to cycle through heads of these different functions, and the longer you wait until you're just confident that you get it, there's a reproducible sale here. And this is why people buy, and this is the skill that I need. I mean, just to sort of pick an example, the question we asked ourselves in our software company now is, do we need someone who's a content expert? We sell analytic software to call centers and field service organizations. Do they just need to understand that world, or do they need to understand technology, or do they need to understand how to build a lead generation and direct telesales organization? We just needed to know what that profile was, and it took us quite a while to know that. And the same was true of marketing. When we were building the marketing engine at Baby Center, which was about addressing pregnant women, basically, we weren't sure how to do that online. No one really knew in 1996 and 1997. And so we weren't sure, do we need a P&G or J&J or Unilever person to do that? Or do we need like an Amex direct response person to do that? And I mean, they're incredibly skilled people with lots of different environments out there. And you got to wait till you know. And, well, that's the advice I'd give on that.
So, as I said, I did a lot of the initial selling. There were basically two of us there were initial 5 people in the company that kind of had very different skill sets. And I came out of the industry that we were targeting. One other gentleman came out of market research because we're somewhat a market research company, but not really. We're an enterprise software company that plays in market research. And we had head technology folks. So we basically had 5 people with very different skill sets. And the head of market research and I did all of the selling exclusively for the first 7 years of the company, I would say. And we basically, and again, I completely agree with Mark. It was, we knew that, we kind of really got a handle on what the customers wanted. We built up a lot of credibility in the industry. Clients and non-clients alike all, kind of knew who we were, and we kept those relationships going. And I think that was, a huge benefit. And, we were able to achieve a 75% market share in the industry just that way. And I think that we felt we needed to hire a head of sales when we needed to make a transformational change. We basically were trying to expand into other industries, and one option would have been to go out and hire somebody from each industry and have them be the industry expert and go out and sell, or to try and leverage what we had in the hospitality industry across these other industries. And I think that we felt that in the hospitality industry, the people, the buyers of this, are very much the operations people. So having had that experience was a huge benefit because they're relating to you having that experience and kind of being out there in the field like they were. But in other industries, it was bought more as a traditional market research product. And so we felt that somebody who could kind of leverage that knowledge of the market research enterprise feedback management industry would be very helpful, and in terms of penetrating some of these other industries. And so we just last year hired a top sales executive, and we looked for a couple of things. One of them was we feel cultural fit is really important. Because at the end of the day, I think that's going to be the biggest thing for whether or not this person is going to be able to make it, successfully in our company. And one of the things, in terms of our culture, our selling culture, was very much very much a soft sell, long-term strategy. It was not, kind of the hard sell. Like, you don't want to spend $1 million with somebody you think is a used car salesperson and you can't trust. So it was pretty much developing that trust over time. And so we wanted somebody who we felt had that kind of a personality. And I think somebody we did feel it was important to have a knowledge of our industry. And I think thirdly, we were really looking for somebody who we thought could build a sales team. Somebody who, was good at building sales teams, knew how to compensate people, knew how to create loyalty. And that's what we really looked for.
When and who? For us, with Nixon, it was about a year in. We, like you guys, the founders did the selling to the reps. The reps were doing that, but we didn't know how to manage a rep force. All of a sudden, you have 24 reps in the States. You have 8 distributors around the world, and we're focused on marketing and product. And again, sales hits you in the face. So we knew that we needed somebody who had that direct experience in our industry, that had relationships with these buyers, for 10 or 15 years. And we got our elephant gun out and tried to get the biggest guy we could get, with the biggest Rolodex, with the best relationships, and he got the biggest part of our option pool. And that was in June of '99. He's been with us ever since, and he's a huge part of why we still exist. He knew what we didn't know, and he knew the people we didn't know. So he really kind of took what we put together and sort of professionalized it. Who were we looking for and why this guy? I said the relationships, yes, but I agree that by planning horizon and culture, and we were really thinking that we were going to create a product that was just so sexy that everybody would run out and get one. That another way of saying we wanted a pull strategy. Let's make this stuff really nice. We're not going to sell this with a gift with purchase, or it's cheaper than everybody else. It's got to be pull all the way through. So the planning horizon, the ability to see that strategy was important to us, and a sales guy too. Planning just because here's a guy that had way more experience than the company had, and snap your fingers, if his planning horizon was 18 months or maybe 2 years, he would place our product in retailers that just we wouldn't be ready for. we'd get placed, and then everybody would scratch their head, who's this brand? I never heard anything about it, and it may or may not work. So it was important to us that this guy understood the pull strategy, understood saying, okay, we're going to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. Don't just go to step 3 to make your bonus and then leave in 18 months. So the planning horizon was really important for us, as well as aggressiveness. I mean, sales guys, or salespeople, I don't know where it comes from, but everybody in sales are probably the most aggressive people in our organization. So that ability to have a salesperson with a pull strategy was sort of who we were looking for. Another company I'm involved with is a startup vacuum cleaner company, of all things. There's some new technology to it. It's pretty exciting. It just launched last fall. But these guys were technology guys, and I said, hey, they called me up and said, how do you make a product in China? Like, making a product in China is so easy, because you're spending the money. Anybody's going to take your phone call. But how are you going to place this thing in Sears? And the guy really scratched his head for a while and then said, I'm going to sell it online. And yeah, that doesn't really work in vacuum cleaners. So he went out and straight out of the gate, their third employee, I think, was VP of sales for Dyson that he recruited onto his startup team. And again, without him, I don't think they would have gotten any product placed.
So we have a lot of salespeople, and so I'd echo a couple things that were said. Culture is by far for us the most important when hiring a head of sales or head of marketing. And secondly, I would highly advocate putting it off as long as possible. We've been through 3 VPs of sales. We've now got a stud who's been with us for a while. Hopefully he'll be with us forever. But a few things. So Andy said aggressive, and we've got these, a lot of them inside of our company. And the truth is, managing salespeople is brutal. It's tough. They all think they run the company. They're in your office every day. They want more money. They want less work. They complain about why they can't sell. They complain about customer service. And we were eager to offload that, and we thought a VP of sales is the great solution. So our problem number one was we had direct relationships with all of these people, and they were literally our friends because we bootstrapped the company. And our first VP of sales came in with 25 salespeople. VP of sales comes in, and we're relatively young and tells us what we don't know, how our culture is bad, how our systems are bad, how everything needs changed. And we say, well, he's a gray hair VP of sales. Okay. We start changing things. Turned out to be a disaster. He didn't understand our industry. We took him from outside the industry, and it was a mistake. And the salespeople, when you bring a new VP of sales into a sales organization, they are going to revolt. It's like a truism, I have to imagine. Because they're threatened, and that person wants to change things. So we terminated the first guy, and now we set the precedent that the inmates are running the asylum because they told us fire this guy, and we fired. So we brought in the second VP of sales, and similar things happened, cultural differences. The third person that we hired ended up literally being a friend who we'd been working with for years, and was the guy that we'd go out and drink beers with who ran a big sales organization and say, why can't we get sales right? And it turned out, well, we're hiring salespeople, which salespeople are infamously bad managers generally, and we're not getting the right person who understands our culture, appreciates our culture, respects our people, and people respect him. So the last one, who's now been with us for 3 years, has been very successful. But culture, really important. Put it off as long as possible. And we now have a policy internally that we won't hire a VP or above level from a search. Our first 2 salespeople were from an outside search. Costs us money. You end up definitionally getting someone who's either seeking or willing to be lured away, which means when they're in your organization, the same thing's going to happen. So now we basically only hire referrals for VP and above, or internally promote as little specific bit of feedback.
All right. So I have other questions to ask the panel, but I'm not going to ask them. And so I'm going to apologize to Michelle and to Drew, who worked with me to come up with some of these advanced questions. I'm sure there are good ones out here in the audience as well. The other thing I'll say to the panel is that we shared some of our preliminary questions with them. We said, give this some thought. So some of you may be disappointed in thinking, oh, I had a killer answer to that question that you were going to ask me. But let's take a lesson from the political candidates who are out in the hustings now. It doesn't really matter what question these guys ask. If you have a really great answer, you'll figure out how to get it in somewhere, right? So, feel free to take that bit of license. Right? So with that, what I'd like to do is spend the remainder of the time fielding your questions. My job as the moderator is to simply try to get around to as many of you as possible. What I would ask you to do is, if you put your hand up, think first of all, is this question going to be interesting to somebody other than me in this room? If you think there's one other person, then that's sort of a good indicator that it's a sufficiently general question. When you ask the question, you can pose it either to the panel or to a specific individual in the panel, and we'll see how they want to handle it from there. All right? So with that, please raise your hand if you have a question that you'd like to ask. David.
I guess this is initially a question for Brad, but if anyone else wants to chime in. So you said there's a big difference between, or good salespeople don't always make good sales managers.
Yeah.
How do you pick the difference when picking a manager or a rep, or if you want to promote your reps into management?
Yeah, it's a great question that we struggle with a lot, is we have a lot of people, and we are now at an evolution in our company where we're dealing with, you have to promote people or they're going to get frustrated and leave. So the way that we structure our sales organization, I manage sales. We have a VP, 2 directors, several managers, and then pods of 8-person sales teams, each with a team lead who's a selling person. We have consistently made this error, and this, I don't know what the solution to this one is, but we promoted early on our best salespeople into the team lead position. The best salesperson, and correct me if I'm wrong, but self-centered, very aggressive, very money-driven, very competitive, will stab somebody in the back to get a sale. It's what makes them successful.
You are nothing if not opinionated on the subject.
By the way, I love them all dearly. I sincerely do. But it's what makes them great. Now we promote that person to a team lead position. Almost every time is a problem. So the things that for us has made great managers, teamwork, cohesion, looking out for other people's best interests before their own, is a very challenging thing in sales. So now we sort of do a 360 review. We talk to the people on their team. We talk to the VP of sales. We have a serious sit down with them and figure out is upward mobility the right thing for them. The other challenge is very frequently when we promote them into positions of management, they make less money. Yeah. So now you get in this horrible situation, which is a real catch-22 because inherently it's human nature. You want to move up. You want to be promoted. But these guys want more money. So it's a real challenge that we haven't solved. I mean, we've lost some top salespeople because I think they burn out after 6 years, and we say, this person's a great salesperson, not a great manager. I think at the VP level, we're pretty clear. In manager level, we've gone outside of our organization and people that have run large sales groups. But it's an ongoing struggle that we deal with, every day. In sales. Other groups, no problem there.
Anybody else have just jump in if you have a perspective you want to share on that.
I agree. I think about the issue of the personality fit in some ways. I think that the salesperson naturally is always going to want what's best for them, which hopefully, if your incentives are correct, is best for the company. But the sales manager has to be somebody that's willing to kind of, not necessarily do what's best for them, but do what's best for the team or the company. And I think that you'll see a very different personality out of that. And it doesn't mean that the sales manager couldn't necessarily have been isn't a good salesperson in some ways, but it's a slightly different personality. I mean, our head of sales, he does do sales and he's pretty effective at it, but he's not the best salesperson on the team, for sure.
Okay, other questions in the back.
So the conversation reminds me of Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, where there's a group of salespeople that have regular excuses for not selling. They never get good leads. So Brad, you mentioned this, but others might want to comment. How do you motivate? Selling is overcoming the customer's objections. Yeah. Managing salespeople is overcoming salespeople's objections. All reasons you can't sell. Yeah. How do you motivate salespeople through that? Particularly in the early stages.
Yeah, so I'd say one is money. Okay, if they're motivated by money, you align their compensation. I'll give you another early mistake that we made is we're a bunch of MBA students and we're private equity guys. We love spreadsheets. We built all these models and ROI models and how to best compensate people, and of course that ends up being 100% variable. We're bootstrapped. We're pretty lean on money, so you eat what you kill. Now we can't get our salespeople to show up to work anymore once they've hit their quota, and they kind of are like gunslingers. So we changed that model, and then honestly, for us, its culture is just a huge deal. We really do love them up a ton. We celebrate all their accomplishments. The top guys don't complain. It's the guys that don't sell that are full of excuses generally. And frankly, part of the sales organization is we turn people over, pretty frequently. But in terms of, keeping people happy and overcoming their objections, it's a big part of it. The founders spend a lot of time, a disproportionate amount of time with the sales organization, to be honest. And you got to figure out what each person is motivated by. And it is money for a lot of great salespeople, but for some people it's recognition, public recognition. So we do lots of competitions and reward lots of different little things very publicly. For some people it is actually watching people on their team succeed. So the team model for us has been great because you get pretty good cohesion, and then the teams like to compete against each other, and you align incentives there. And lots of Red Bull. Keeps them all. keeps a sales organization just sort of spinning.
I have a slightly different point of view. I love managing salespeople and hate managing engineers. And the reason is, love them. They're great. We have mostly engineers at our company, and the reason is because it's we have these big sales campaigns. They take 6 to 12 months, so there's lots of activity to manage. And the right salespeople for us are very process-driven and process-oriented. So there's lots of things to study. And if someone's not following the process, they're not pursuing the campaign in the right way, you know it's going to work or not work long before you get to results. And at the end of the day, it's the results that matter. They'll leave or you'll terminate them. And try to put that kind of process on a product development and engineering organization. It just doesn't work. It's much harder. So you hope you have motivated people and great engineering leadership. So, for us, to avoid the Glengarry Glen Ross thing, one, you got to have the right set of incentives. And you have lots of opportunities to change your incentives and your comp plan and your structure to make sure people are going the right way. And then, let people know there's a lot more than just the result that, matters for their advancement and for their success. How we do 360 and peer review. We do customer feedback for every rep. We do, activity and pipeline, reporting every single week. There's all sorts of things you can do to manage it. And if someone's a baby and, they're not really sort of living up to the job, they'll get rejected by our organization. And then, the big dilemma really is someone who's an incredible rainmaker and a baby. That's the hard part in sales, and we generally keep them.
It's all about the money.
To that point, too, excuse me, very early on, our bonus structure was completely up to my discretion. Said, look, we don't have a history. I don't know if you're going to sell 50%, 100%, 150%. Do you know? I don't know. Nobody knows. So, yeah, you're going to be motivated by your bonus. And this is what a range might be, and then how much you get is you just got to trust me. That's what I told my sales guy. Trust me that if you do a good job, you play fair, and everything else, then I'll take care of you. And I had to because the guys hit their targets. The other one, the sales guys, they're going around pointing. Well, the operations guys didn't ship, and the product guys are late, and the marketing guys had ads way off, and it's it's a huge flashlight into the depths of the organization. It's like great. Okay, now I know what to work at. Just to kind of to quiet down your sales team. Those are the areas I need to fix, or I should concentrate on, because those guys they know what's shipping and what it's not shipping and why. So.
Well, that's the great thing about selling yourself, because you just be pointing the finger at yourself, basically, if things go wrong, or you have nobody to complain to, right? But I think that one of the things I would add to this is that really focus on getting the product right, because it's great to sell a good product. You walk into clients and they love your product, right? It was never, you didn't have to ever go in, and it was in some ways it was easy to sell. It wasn't, because the sales cycles were long and they were big amounts of money. But we had people saying, we had people who didn't buy from us that said, we love your product, right? There were other reasons, cost or whatever, but it was a very easy thing to sell, and so that kind of makes it nice to be a salesperson. You have a lot less to object to.
Okay, another question over here.
Thank you. If you're an early stage company, and by definition you don't have a lot of millions of dollars in sales, and you're trying to recruit a superstar from the same industry, maybe a competitor, how do you try to balance cash, salary versus commission? Do you give guarantees? How do you do that?
In the really early days, with a salesperson, it's hard to deviate from the cash comp that's in your industry, in my experience. You might play with equity, go up a lot, down a lot. It won't matter. The cash comp's the cash comp in the industry. That's my experience in sales. It's very different in engineering, possibly marketing, and some other functions. Curious to know what other people think. So we've tried to be competitive on equity, but generally we match, what happens in our industry. And then, all the companies I've been a part of, we try to maximize the variable piece, but there's usually an industry standard for what the base is, and then it's really about taking that variable piece and designing it in such a way that you're driving the right behavior, and people can do really well, and you want people to do really well. So it's kind of a stock answer. That's what we found.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, there is an industry standard. I mean, it's probably the same standard for Mark about how much of the sale, basically, the salesperson should get. And we don't put any caps on that. So, the potential's huge. And, obviously there's a pretty big equity component as well for the senior managers of sales. I think that the actual salespeople are very focused on that, how much am I going to make this year? So making sure that, that there's a big upside for them, because that's the, behavior that you want in some ways is important.
I'd say really quick, just to add something. So if it's a short sales cycle, you can juice the variable component because they're going to get paid pretty quick. If it's a long sales cycle, they're not going to hang out that long for that. They'll take the guaranteed thing. The other thing is an early stage organization, depending on what level that person is in the other organization, you do have significant opportunity to shape an organization as an early employee and significant opportunity for career advancement that maybe if you're leaving IBM and you're 8 levels down in an organization, it's 30 years until you get to director level, that may really be meaningful to that individual to say, if you're successful here at entering at a manager level, you could be director in a year, VP in 3 years. For some people, that is, really resonates.
Okay, go back.
So there's a few professors here at the school that have sort of driven in our heads that MBA should get sales experience, real formal sales experience, very valuable for running a company. I want to hear your thoughts on that. Do you sort of wish you had formal sales experience before running your companies, and if not, is it sufficient to sort of learn on the job and apply you guys might have?
So I'd say you have to have sales experience. I think, so here's what I'd say. You're selling yourself to your first employees, you're selling yourself to your clients, you're selling yourself to your investors, you're selling yourself to your board. Every day you sell yourself to your employees. Sales is the most important thing that you as a founder do, even though it's probably not defined as sales. For me, I had none. I did get it, on the job. And we made a lot of mistakes. For us, that was okay, though. We entered a market where it kind of bailed us out a little bit. But I would feel very strongly it's a lot of work. It's a tough job where you get rejected a lot, but, so is running a company. So I strongly advocate for that.
Any opposing or alternative views on that?
It's one of those disciplines, you're either good at it or you're not. It's like, hey, I don't know, some people are just great musicians, some people aren't great musicians. I think there's a lot in terms of the skills that you can acquire, but I think there are some people who can sort of show up as a founder, start selling, and be really effective. You don't need to have been through the Xerox program. And I think there are other people who might not naturally be good at it, and some fundamental training would be a really useful thing. But I completely agree with the statement that the arrows in your quiver in sales are just essential when you're a company founder. You use them all the time.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, what techniques did you do to establish your culture and your company through, let's say, national in a hurry, and those people are not logistically located in your office? They're different states. I don't know who wants to answer that. Looks like Andy might.
Sales meetings. We put a lot of money into our sales meetings. We get the entire team together for 3, 4, or 5 days. We make sure that there's all the normal things of a sales meeting, but then again, we try to put it in a really fun place. Yeah. That's in a top of a mountain in Switzerland. We've been there, Costa Rica. I mean, everything involved with our industry, in the action sports. Yeah. So the cultural piece was our one time to have, real face to face with all the sales team.
And how often, from the beginning, would you do it quarterly or yearly? Or
Every season is 3 times a year.
3 times a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Johannes.
I was just wondering, what was your strategy to grow geographically? For a small company, maybe start first in a small geographic area and then go overseas, or?
We're only domestic, so.
We just internationalized our products and built European operations this last year, and we waited a long time. We actually had orders from Japan that we turned down in the early years because we were certain we would screw it up badly, and that's not what a mistake we could afford to make. So we waited until we really understood that particular region. We understood the sales model, and we knew that our product was of a quality and could be internationalized before we did it. And in our industry, there's kind of a set of rules that makes that kind of easy to make the decision that way, but we waited till we were ready.
We waited a long time as well. I think part of it is, just knowing that market and being able to sell into it, especially when you're a business-to-business customer. It's a little, it's very challenging in that way. And I think we had an initial angel investor, but we basically, were funded completely out of cash flow and were profitable after 3 years. And so, to some degree, it was a resource issue. I mean, we kind of wanted to get the market here in North America before we went international, and so we did that about 2 years ago. And now we're operating on all the continents. So
See, we went right away, and it was a source of financing. We went to distributors out of the states who we could use their orders to back up our own with the factory, and that helped us as a financing tool as much as anything. But to talk to the right distributor and make sure they understand the brand and our sequence of what we wanted to do in terms of launching the brand, that was probably the hardest part.
When you say source of financing, were you trying to borrow against future receivables? What do you mean?
Well, we do back-to-back LCs. The distributor from Japan would place a big order. So we'd have them write a letter of credit, and then we take that to our bank and just transfer that to our vendor. And that really kind of saved us, actually, or got us off the ground. Or if they don't want to do an LC, it's like, oh, fine, give me a 50% deposit, cash, 90 days before I deliver.
Right, because they don't have credit.
Right. So they'll just send you cash.
I mean, the answer, these very different answers seem to depend on whether or not you're going to leverage an existing distribution system or whether you're trying to build your own. And Mark is saying that we couldn't take our own and build it out that fast. We had to actually have the discipline to say no. It's actually kind of interesting and refreshing to hear about companies that turn down orders, but you had the discipline to say, it gets us in trouble if we try to go too far, too fast.
The only thing worse than an angry, disappointed customer is an angry, disappointed distributor. And, we knew even if we chose to go with that model in Europe or in Asia, they'd be incredibly knowledgeable in their anger about us. And so we just figured we weren't ready.
And effective at spreading the word?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
This dovetails on Haynes. Did you guys ever do that type of financing where you guys are trying to get your customers to either prepay or push for savings, or you're trying to borrow against future sales or financing? How did you guys get financing?
We raised a small round of venture capital in 2001. We got profitable on that. So the big decision in our business, which is really software-specific thing, is switching from a traditional licensing model where they pay up front for the software and then implement over time to the sort of more, nouveau software as a service subscription model where, it's very expensive for a number of years, but then you have great recurring revenue. And we're still sort of wrestling with, we do both when we make the switch. So because we get paid up front for our software, we've kind of financed the growth of our company. We've got 10 times the cash and receivables as the total amount that we capitalized the company with in 2001, and it's all off of customers, and that's been really, really painful and hard. But it sounds like we're in the same situation you're in.
yeah, we had an initial round of initial angel investor, and we bought him out and have been profitable since since 2003. Just funded out of cash flow, and we are a software for sure, subscription service basically. So we have some initial, implementation fees, but really we have kind of huge revenue streams that hopefully, if we don't lose customers, go on for quite a long time, and we haven't lost a customer yet. So.
Yes.
So, this is Mark. You talked about having distribution. Were you able to get distribution and your reputation prior to getting the first big sales, or did it require that you did the first big sales yourself and then the distributors became interested?
In the businesses I've been in, selling direct initially was essential, and I know that's not the case in lots of businesses, but in the ones we're in, and it was also a sort of a conviction that we had early on. We wanted to make sure that we were more knowledgeable about the problem. Because we were building software or a consumer internet experience around it, there was no sort of existing channel. And if we weren't in direct contact with the customer and we weren't gathering the requirements and figuring out what was bad and why it was bad and all those things, then we were missing kind of key requirements that had to feed to the product development organization, and we wouldn't have this sort of sales advantage that we wanted to have. So we waited a number of years before we formed distribution relationships, and we've only recently done it. It's been really good, but we chose to wait. Is that what you're looking for?
When you have a small company, sometimes it's not very easy to find a good guy with experience on sales, because you cannot afford this guy. They are working with other company and they have a good commission. So they say, well, I don't know your product. The people don't know your product, so maybe it's hard to introduce your product. So it's hard to get this guy because he said, well, I have the commission already. I'm getting good money. I'm going to take a huge risk with you. You are a small company. You are starting. So in one point, I know that some companies do. It's easier to get your own sales people, like start with them. Maybe it's people that you trust and you want to teach them and maybe grow with them, or try to find a guy with experience, with more expertise in the market, and maybe pay more, maybe take the risk and maybe take the investment of this guy. So I don't know what's better. What do you think about this both situation? Well, maybe I can start with these people that I trust. They don't know anything, but I can teach them. Or maybe I have to find this guy who has experience in the market and go for this side. I don't know in your experience.
So, how about if I weigh in on one?
Let me. This isn't going to answer your question, but I'll tell you really quickly. This will be my political answer. You're waiting to answer. Your first couple salespeople, I'd pay up for. Is once you get everything systematized, and Mark talked about this a little bit, and you get the sales process dialed in, you can plug Bs in. You can't plug Bs in when it's sort of de novo and you're trying to figure out your sales process and culture. And your early salespeople are going to have such a big impact on what you are 5 years down the road, because they're going to complain about all the other processes, including their sales processes. I would have a bias, if you're going to stretch on hires, get some really good salespeople early on. They will, who are culturally a good fit and give you positive feedback. They'll help you refine all those systems, processes, and help create a stronger company going forward.
The only thing I'd say to that is it's not just sales that you're building. You're building the organization. So I would have A people across the board. Now, the chance of actually finding those in each functional part of the company is pretty slim. You're not going to find the great operations guy, the great finance guy, the great sales guy, you're not going to find them all. If you do, then that's a great problem to have. Now, which one should I pick? And of my resources, which one am I going to go? I set the bar pretty high across the board, and then tried to find the best I could find in each group. It just turned out that you'd find some green people that you didn't have to pay up for in some areas of the business, and you found superstars in others. More opportunistic, I guess. Or did you want to answer that?
Well, if I were to answer this, I've been teaching this sales management elective with Mark Leslie here at the GSB for about 5 years. And we brought in dozens of sales professionals who've been on panels and so on. And I believe that if you ask that question to them, they would almost unanimously respond that what you need to do is you need to find experience. You don't hire somebody into a new organization and somehow endow them with what they need to manage the growing sales organization that you're trying to build. Now, that means you have to get really creative at convincing them to come and join you. Find ways of doing it, but look for the experience out there so you can bring the person in that you need. Okay. Jill.
Elizabeth talked about how important it is to have a good product to sell, and I think that's true. My question for you is, how important is a good brand? I think it's astounding that you were able to use your connections to get the Nixon watches into these places, but to have the sell-through with an unknown brand, how important is brand, and have any of you done direct-to-consumer sales online to establish that brand?
Well, I guess from my perspective, I think when you're in a business-to-business industry versus a business-to-consumer, I think maybe there's a different answer here, because I think that we sold, as I said, we were able to sell based on our personal networks, our personal reputations, and get in places where, if we did, I think that brand might have been more important if we didn't have that, right? And if we were kind of really going after a mass market. I think that because we had the product, because we had the networks, we were able to do that. But I think it was kind of interesting because I found even 5 years into it, when we had over 50% of the market, there were RFPs that went out that we were not invited on. And it was shocking to me when this would happen, because you would think, we have 50% of the market, we would at least be invited to answer an RFP. And that's where I think branding, in some ways, we fell down on branding, because I think we were so busy on selling, and marketing kind of came secondary in some ways, right? And we were focused on selling and engineering and delivering, and we kind of said, we'll deal with that thing later. So we're dealing with it now, but because now we're trying to enter new industries, and there we feel if people understand our brand, understand what we've done in hospitality, that'll help tremendously.
For us, it was critical. We needed there had to be a story of why our watch wasn't just a hunk of metal next to another hunk of metal next to another hunk of metal on a shelf somewhere. The retailers, they're risk averse like anybody else, and they want to make sure that will sell through. So if you don't have the story to sell them on how you're going to create the brand and the awareness outside of their door, they won't bring it in. So we were focused completely on what our story is, and will that be able to be told on the shelf to the consumer. And we went online very, very quietly to avoid channel conflict, and we still have a strategy of pushing sales to our retailers, supporting our retail base. But if somebody's out there and wants to buy from us, they can.
Having done a consumer and a business-to-business company, I'd say brand always matters, but they mean different things. So brand on the enterprise side is about the one-on-one people interactions with the people in your company and word-of-mouth reputation. So we have very consultative salespeople. They're not slick. That's the brand, for the company. Whereas at Baby Center, which was consumer-oriented, it was. We never interacted with the customer. That was all about their experience with the website and that it be trusted and quality and things that, moms cared about intensely. But, when I look at the companies, I think brand mattered in an enormous way, just differently.
Okay, Ronnie.
So what about when it comes to developing your product? If you go to market and you really don't understand the client or the customer, then you're going to bomb out because you're going to miss the market. You don't understand what they're trying to accomplish. You don't understand what their problems are. You don't understand what their pain is. So how do you find out what their pain is before you actually produce a product?
I can take a crack at that. You talk to a lot of people, and you talk to people outside of your circle. For us, we didn't know what our products were going to be. Our initial launch with Freedom Financial Network was to do consumer financial advisory services to help people with serious money problems. We had no idea what our product was going to be, and we thought people with money problems must read the National Enquirer. Shows what we knew. That is like the worst place in the world to get leads for what we do. We put an ad. We didn't know what our product was, and my co-founder and I answered our cell phones at all hours of the night. And he said, what do you need help with? What resonates with you? What's your primary problems? And we personally were just, for free, solving people's problems and putting them in touch with people. We start aggregating hundreds of data points, and pretty quickly we got to a little loop where it was like, the 80-20 rule, and we felt like, this is interesting. We keep seeing the same problems over and over. And people are referring their buddy to say, hey, you solved my problem in a neat way. And then we went out and marketed those. We didn't have a brand, so what we did is we focused on features. In our world, it got to everyone was focused on their monthly payment, which for us was not intuitive. We thought we were going to market, save more money. And then we started marketing these little features for us, cut monthly payments with these innovative financial services products, and the phone just starts ringing off the hook. And then we say, we got it. And then we tailored our product to that pretty quickly.
So then do you guys now do payday lending?
No, we don't. I'm not a fan of that product, but we do debt resolution, tax resolution, student loan consolidation, mortgages, conforming mortgages, and then consumer financial advisory services free through bills.com.
From the consumer product standpoint, listening to the retailer, it could be dangerous because it's rear view mirror. I just got my sell-through report, and the green one sold and the big one sold. So what are they going to tell you? Give me a big green one. And who knows who needs a big green watch? So we try to always sell through reports and listen to our retailers, but we try to work with the guys that feel comfortable enough with us saying yes, this is going to work. So it's more more upfront focus group type stuff.
I mean,
really tactical thing that we did with Dominic at GE. We just negotiated into our original contract that we'd get 2 days a month on site in his call centers for our product development organization and product managers, and we got a year of in-depth requirements gathering, and that was part of the deal in the original contract. So we built our product around real customer requirements, and they were really happy to do it.
And I would agree with Brad too. I think find someone that knows that market well, that has experienced those pain points. I mean, that was actually me when I first started with the company, and then basically talked to a lot of other people. So we called, people we knew, we cold called into these organizations for the people who bought this and said, we're starting this business, and we want to understand what it is you would look for in this. And amazing amount of people, would talk to us, and we already had some ideas of things that we thought would work or wouldn't work, and we tested those with those people. And it was actually kind of a good pre-sale networking thing, because then when we had something, we came back and called those same people. So,
I'd make one more comment there too, is on the recruiting front, in recruiting salespeople, it's a great way to get intelligence about what's working, what's not. Good salespeople love to talk, and when you are recruiting them, and in business school, you guys should go to the library and get like a career builder or a Hot Jobs account and just start calling people that are doing sales, that are looking for jobs, and say what worked, what didn't, what messages sold effectively, and I'll bet you'll learn a ton about what does and what doesn't work.
Okay, yes.
So early on, I guess this is more for if you have a cycle that's reasonably long and you really constrain on resources, how do you figure out whether to scope the pipeline and become more breadth, but really focus down on a few and try to get the close?
We developed a pipeline methodology, not immediately, but pretty soon, with a really ruthless qualification, process. So, up or out. You're either migrating, the opportunity to make a sale is either, advancing, or we're not going to spend time on it. And we just try to stick to that philosophy. So, if we're chasing a $2 million or $6 million sales opportunity, which is what we do, there's sure signs that it's not advancing, that your champion is weak, or there's objection somewhere in the organization. And I don't think I have much but a general answer to say. Just have to have that discipline, to look the salesperson in the eye and say, you've got happy ears. We're not going to spend time there. That's enough. Let's move on to the next one. And we just did our best to do that.
I think our experience might have been a slightly different one, because we had a target list, and it was drawn at a very high level because there were very few of us. There were 2 of us, right? And we were also designing product, and so basically it was drawn at basically the top 20 companies in the industry. So and these are huge global organizations, right, with 6,000 properties and so on. So we targeted that list. We aggressively tried to get contacts at the senior level into that group, and we basically developed relationships throughout, as many relationships as we could in those organizations. And we kept those up. I'm still very good relationships with people who are non-clients. We basically started up a conference, a best practices conference for the industry, and we invite clients and non-clients alike. And it's kind of interesting because it was a big risk, we felt, because we had a couple major competitors in the industry, and we were very concerned at the outgo that we thought we had kind of a competitive advantage with both our product in general, and we have a benchmarking product that's cross-industry, and it was kind of that was our special selling thing, right? So we said, you can only get this through us, right? And we didn't want really the other players to find out about it. So we were in kind of stealth mode for so long. Our website had 1 page. It was ridiculous. If you tried to research us, you got this 1 page, right? So we thought nobody's going to actually talk to us when they see 1 page up there, right? But we invited people to this conference, and because we knew enough people, we got people to come, and now it's we've had the 3rd one just last year, and we had every major hotel company, client or not, has come to this, and they actually talk. It's weird. You get a bunch of competitors in the room, and they tell each other what they do in this area, right? But it's hugely beneficial to us because now it's kind of a standardized thing. People only can, we are the only one that has this, and we get a lot of intelligence that we build into our product out of it. So sometimes you have to be willing to take a little bit of a risk like that,
But I think your question kind of gets at the heart of what a good salesperson does naturally. They prioritize ruthlessly, and they know where to, their scarce commodity is time. And they can waste a lot of time if they're going in the wrong direction. And a truly effective sales VP or sales director can monitor their people and make sure that they're using their time judiciously, and instead of just going scattershot over everything. And so it's hard to give you a precise answer. You just
Yeah, and at some point you do have to say, I'm going to give this one up for now, right? I mean, we did that. We've walked away from sales where we said, okay, we know we're going to have to give this one up for now, but we still kept that relationship going because someday, and I mean, this worked out great. I mean, we had one of the major hotel companies we invited to our first conference, and we made a connection there. And they came back the next year, and all along we heard the board is, we can't fund this project. It's too much money. They had an internal homegrown thing. And, 3 years later, there was a change in the executive, leadership there, and now they're our client. So, but, we were willing to walk away at that point.
In the back.
This is a question for Andy about sort of early stage marketing on a budget. Did you guys use viral marketing, buzz marketing, PR, and how did you time it? How did you say, okay, it's worth it for us to make this investment now?
My partner figured that part out. But instead of going to a trade show and you see your T-shirt everywhere on everybody, was his goal, and we make 20 T-shirts and find the 20 right people, and those guys were everywhere. So 20 T-shirts goes a long way because you're in a trade show with thousands of exhibitors, and they're like, who? I keep on seeing these things, and it's also getting really just first level, finding people to proselytize for you, and who are the athletes that we used, where they might show up. Doing little things for influential people, and then letting those influential people do the marketing for you. I know that's not very practical, but 20 T-shirts sometimes is way more effective than 2,000. I guess my point is, and if you find the right people with those, it goes a long way.
This is a question probably for Mark. With something complex like enterprise software, you said some of your early customers influence you to change the product. I'm imagining there's temptation to change it enough to do whatever you need to close the sale. Do you ever have an issue where you change it so much, or you're worried about changing it so much that you couldn't sell it to anybody else? And if so, how did you manage that?
Yeah, that's a primary concern in enterprise software. If you're so customer driven for the first few or the really big ones, you become a job shop and you ruin your company. So we had enough experience under our belts to know that was just a fatal mistake. And it's one thing to say that thematically. It's another thing to stare T-Mobile, GE, or Amex in the face and say, no, I'm not going to build that. And if that means we lose the deal, then so be it. But that's what we did. And but we did need to have enough people in our network and enough other sort of prospects and folks that if someone said, hey, here's something I want to do. Actually, our biggest customer is Dell, and they're an incredibly aggressive and effective and demanding customer. I mean, they would consume our whole product development organization if we just did what they want. But fortunately, we're now at a scale with 50 or 60 customers that they say, hey, this is great, everybody's going to want it. And we're like, okay, I'll get back to you tomorrow. And we make a bunch of phone calls and we can answer the question. But no, it's a good question because that's a company wrecker if you're not careful.
I was interested in Melissa's first conference. How did you put that together? Because I imagine then you become the default guru of that industry if you're the first one to start, even though you might have some rest. But that first one, did they pay, or did you invite them like a guest to place, or how did it work?
Well, that's a really interesting question. So first of all, I took on the additional role of meeting planner to salesperson. And basically, we decided that, this was a bunch of hospitality people, right? We actually haven't had our first cross-industry conference, right? But the next one will be cross-industry because, now we have Fidelity and Nike and Apple and all these big players that, we want to share knowledge across these industries, right? But, at that point in time, we were exclusively hospitality. And, you get a bunch of hospitality people, they've been everywhere. Right? To get them to come, there has to be a draw, right? So we basically, having been in the industry, I made up a list of 10 places that I thought we could get these people to come to because A, it's kind of an interesting place they wanted to visit, and B, they were we could hold them captive for a couple days because that's another thing about hospitality. If you go to New York City, they're all going to stay in their own hotel, and you lose some of that. A lot of this whole conference is networking. It's, it's not light on content, but it's equally heavy on networking, I would say. And so basically, we had, at that point, we probably had, maybe 5 major clients. But we ended up, and we kept it small. That was the other thing. It was invitation only, and we paid for everything but the flights. So it was basically, it was our big marketing investment for the year, really. We think it's paid off incredibly. I mean, we've gotten directly to sales, major sales out of that. It is kind of, it is the place to go now for this. And it's kind of interesting because we kind of got the idea out of, there was kind of an informal thing that had been set up by a lot of these people in the industry who do this. And they had themselves set up this quality council where they would share these ideas, right? And so we were like, well, this is a really interesting concept. And so we thought, well, let's try, doing one of ours where we talk about best practices and our tool, and we go through our roadmap and, get input. And so, we kind of came up with it. But it isn't, you do have to make the investment. I mean, it's hard to get people there the first time. Once it kind of is successful, people talk about it, and now we don't have any trouble. So
20 T-shirts, you would have.
A lot more than a T-shirt.
Channel partners. How did you guys identify which were the key channel partners that you wanted to have, and how did you get into talking to them and making them work with you when they're not doing that?
Good question. For us, who they are is pretty readily available. The latter was a much bigger problem. Depending what industry you guys are going into, self-serving for you all, but Stanford GSB actually goes a pretty long way in consumer finance. In subprime consumer finance, there's not a lot of Stanford Business School guys doing it. Chuck Holloway's on our board. We leveraged him quite a bit, and he has been really integral in us getting into some big banks that we would have never, ever touched. And then pretty quickly, you execute really well in the first one, make absolutely certain you don't screw it up, and then word of mouth spreads pretty quickly too, and be willing to get on a plane, anytime, anywhere, even if you BS it and say, oh, I'm going to be in Charlotte next week, can I stop by? And you book a flight and go to Charlotte,
We did a lot
but
of
for
that.
us, I think networking is a really, really big thing, and fortunately for us, the GSB has been pretty beneficial. It's opened a lot of doors, and our board members, Chuck's been really valuable.
Yeah, you happen to be in a lot of cities in
Yeah.
the early days.
That's right.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how within the organization you divide up sales, business development, marketing, strategy, sort of at the early stages, later, depending on whether it's, I guess, B2B versus B2C?
So we have different functional areas. I'll just go really quick. We divide direct and indirect channels as two totally separate groups. They both report up to me. Everything on the front end of our business does, and actually that's important. We've had problems where we are overcompensating channel partners, and your salespeople will find out about it and want to go and be a channel partner pretty quick. But then we have functional areas with VPs of every group. I'd say the two that indirect channel and business development is essentially one and the same in our organization. And then marketing and sales are two different, distinct groups, but they talk 18 times a day. And they actually have compensation plans that are correlated. So the marketing guys get comped on customer acquisition cost, which depends on the salespeople closing. Same with sales. So they're very friendly. They talk a lot. So we keep them separate, but we have shared compensation, a portion of their compensation.
For us, I guess it was different across the companies, but in the current software company, we've got, sales, which is all about direct sales, to enterprise customers in various markets. BizDev, just like you, is establishing new indirect sales channels and also bringing in other products that we want to rebrand and resell in OEM. So BizDev does that. And then there's two flavors of marketing. There's kind of corporate marketing and Marcom, and they do PR, analysts, website, lead generation, events, field marketing. And then product marketing, which is about sort of gathering requirements, developing MRDs, overseeing product development. So we've got all those. And at Baby Center, it was different still because it was a consumer business. So we had a lot of brand marketing, and BizDev was about sort of alliances to get traffic and things like that.
So Michelle, when does our session end?
I think we're at time.
It ends at 2:30. So will you please thank you all for your participation. Please join me in thanking